Magic bathwater is liquid philosopher's stone, is what you heard. Well, okay. However you need to hear it, that's fine. Right. All right, let's paint his head. Lorgar. Now, we used underpainting to do the lion's skin tones. We're probably going to do the same thing here, except I'll use a little bit of different colors. We used the dark purple base, burnt red, and bright yellow green to get his stuff started out. I think we'll do Lorgar more with blues into yellows on him, and maybe some burgundy in there on the cheeks. Same concept, but show you how like dark gray blue as a base would work with the flesh over the top of that, as opposed to dark purple. Not blue black. That's not what I said at all. Get a little bit of dark gray blue. Burgundy. And, I mean, because it's so good, there's really not another substitute, so we bring it out once again. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the ring. Bright yellow green. It's hard, man. It's hard to find, like, another color that you want to use as much as bright yellow green when underpainting. I don't think there is one. I think you just got to stick with bright. Why change it? If it ain't broke, don't change it. Right? 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 Right. If I'm not right, I'm close enough to right to where we're just going to go with me being right. Okay? I'm good. You're blue. You get your little head. I want a cooler skin tone for him, not cool like rad dude. Cooler temperature wise, a little bit more pale. I'm probably going to start, as opposed to starting with dark flesh, I'm going to start with shadow flesh on him. Whereas with the lion, we started with dark flesh. Start with shadow flesh here. Definitely needs a mohawk. You never opened up your bright yellow green? Paint liquor, is there a problem? Did you get sick? Did you need some time away from painting? Do you have a doctor's note? I need a better excuse than I just haven't gotten to it right about now. You've never opened bright yellow green. You have yellow green? I can forgive not opening bright yellow green if you're at least using yellow green. Yellow green came later, though. It's a set 4 color. Yeah, cool pack. We don't need. Watching you paint flesh from start to finish is so odd but informative, Quicksilver. It makes 0 sense until it makes all the sense. So we're painting all of the stuff that's underneath the skin right now, right? So blues, reds, and yellows, and greens, right? I use a green to start. You can do this and use yellows over the top or blend it and get your greens and yellows. I just use bright yellow green because it's easy. Um, but yeah, so in blues, yellows, and reds, you can get purples, greens, all those tones that represent fat, uh, uh, subdermal layers, veins, arteries, all of that musculature and stuff that's underneath the skin because your skin is translucent. Now, not not like window clear, but you can see through it, right? If you peeled off layer by layer your skin, there's not a layer of that skin that blocks light. Light gets through, right? And so you want to try to bring the flesh that you're painting to life, unless you have something like an elephant, right, that probably has more opaque skin because it has so many fatty, dense, fatty layers underneath the flesh and all that stuff. Then you don't see as much of the veining and all that stuff until you're probably in like the groin or the lips and things like that, right? Um, so not that you should go messing around elephant groin. I'm not sure I can condone that. That might wind up bad for you, but so we try to show you how to get those colors, and there are a lot of ways to get those colors. You don't have to paint what I'm doing right now. I'm underpainting, meaning that I am throwing these paints underneath my flesh tones and then expecting to see them through my flesh tones by doing my flesh tones very thin. You could do your flesh tones and build them up the way you want, you're used to, and the way you like, and then come back after you've done that and put these colors over the top with a very thin glaze, right? Also, very, very possible and a great way to do it. Up to you, right? This is just one of those confidence things. Like, how do you feel that you're going to achieve the most success? Like to glaze? Do you not like to glaze? Blah blah blah. Totally up to you. I might even do. I mean, it seems silly, but I might even do him with I don't know. Doing a head doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm gonna say we could use the airbrush to filter the skin tone over the top, but that usually doesn't make. I want to get that flush coloration through the mask of the face all the way back to and including the ears. So basically, a band that encapsulates the nose and the ears and the temple. You don't have to go far past the temple. You could drop a little bit on the forehead, but generally not. And if you have enough neck, like he does, we can drop burgundy down below the throat. Generally keep it off the bottom of the chin just because you want shadow there. Put more. Docs, what's going on? Baldy here. Get a lot more bright yellow green around the top of that. Kind of loosely stip around as I get around to the back or the showing as it comes up from the back of the neck. You could also give him more burgundy on the back of the neck. We can't on these Space Marine models see the back of the neck hardly at all. Here. I don't feel like Lorgar is a big 5 o'clock shadow guy, so I'm going to drop some yellow on the lip. That looks. There you go. His face is painted. We can put it on the body. It's done. Dun, 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 dun. You've used burgundy on every model since it came out. It's great. Yeah, it really is. I'm surprised that it took us so long to decide that it found a slot in, but it's been a planned color since the beginning. Creepy, what's going on? Yeah, we've been working on his gold armor. I say gold. His gold trim on his miles of ash gray armor. Just working on that to start the show. Got the highlighting done. I'm still not done with that, but I'm to the point where I'm going to start adding other colors in, like dark reflections of purple and blue, and all of the green spots on the armor that you see now. A much warmer gold than the bronze that I chose for the Dark Angel. Right? Lion the Johnson. To give it some oomph. Show you a different way to do yellow metallic. Saturated with color. I'm going to break that damn Crozius. I do not want to wet blend the skin, and so I was pretty heavy with the green here, so we got to let that dry. I don't want to put the skin tone on the top and have it blend with the one thing to be very aware of when you're kind of painting. Whereas if you're layering or glazing, well, I guess if you're layering, you can wet blend all these skin colors. You've seen us do that before, where we'll take like dark purple and shadow flesh and wet blend them on the model. And you can do 3-color wet blending if you're good with it and quick. I think on one of the hate models we did that. We took dark purple, burnt red, and shadow flesh, and we did 3 colors of wet blending on all the muscle groups. And you get a fantastic base layer of skin that gives you the shadow, the blood under the skin with the burnt red. You miss the greenish because it's just too hard to wet blend 4 colors, honestly. And you don't want the green really to mix with the flesh color. So you got to be careful when underpainting. Let all those layers dry, then glaze the skin tone over the top. Or if you want to start, like has been mentioned in chat, if you want to go with like a darker reddish, purplish, brownish tone, you know, like dark flesh, shadow flesh, tan flesh, kind of triad for your skin. You can do that. And then like T. Schmid's talking about, you can then glaze like burgundy back into the cheeks and the flush areas around the ear and temple, eyes, underneath neck and all that. And then also glaze in like dark gray blue like we're doing now, or like that we're using now, you know, for the base skin tone color. You can glaze that dark gray blue around for men, the jawline and the back of the head. You could also do dark purple for that. If I'm doing women, I tend to typically wind up using more of a dark purple for that. For men, generally more of the dark gray blue, but it depends. Like for Lionel Johnson, because he had the beard, right? I just went ahead and did the purple. So the dark purple was kind of the underlayment for him. Glazed the skin tones over purple, burnt red, and bright yellow green to get his skin. And it just gives you more life to your flesh. It does take more time. So I'm usually only doing this on characters. I'm not going to do this. Well, maybe on the Marines for these guys, because only a couple of the Marines and each of my forces is going to have a helmet off. I don't like that. So I might take and spend more time on those heads, because it might only be a handful, 3 or 4 more dudes that, you know, like that. All right. Dry enough? Government work? Sort of, kinda. Shadow flesh. Because like I said, I want him to be a little more pale than we did on Lionel Johnson. Lionel Johnson, I started with dark. So dark flesh, obviously, deeper reddish, purplish skin tone. We're just going to start directly with the brighter shadow flesh. Tried out layering last night. Was pretty pleased with the results. Gosu, nice. Yeah, I mean, you know, layering is the traditional way that we're painting all the time. You're always layering. It's just how thin or thick are those layers as you're doing them that really denotes how they're going to interact. The only thing I would say is that wet blending, you know, paint into paint or paint onto paint on the model is less of a layering technique, because you're creating one layer out of blended color live on the model, which can work really well because you're dealing with the geometry of the model live, as opposed to painting the same geometry 2 or 3 times with layering to get it right. It just depends on where your brain is centered on enjoying going. I like to teach and spread the wet blending word as a way to do your base coats. You can get more dynamic base coats with wet blending, so you've got a shadow moving into a midtone, moving into a highlight through wet blending, and then layer on top of that, and then glazing and layering and all that in between. Glazing is also layering. It's just very... I'm just going to take a big old brush load of water. We're looking at this. Okay, that's the level of thinness I'm wanting. Let everything show through still. And we're just going to start painting that on there. Should take this opportunity to use the glaze medium. Oop. First layer, just looking for some quick coverage, not really looking to find the entire model turning flesh tone. You'll get a little bit of that flesh tone starting to seek on there. Right. But you're going to want to layer your first color through multiple layers. You know, when doing this right, I feel like you're probably 3 or 4 layers into your flesh tone. Each time going a little bit less thin as you go. Let's mix a little bit in a cup with the... I'm trying to get better, chat, at not glazing with just water, because the whole point of the glaze wash medium was to show you how you can do what I'm doing without having to have that confidence in working with super thin paint, because you don't want the paint pooling, you don't want the paint, you know, streaking on the model, things like that. So being able to do it with the medium, always a safe bet. You want to get into this kind of underpainting and glaze work. Don't need very much paint in the medium. Again, I'm estimating, but you know, 3 or 4 times the amount of glaze medium as you have paint. So. Doesn't change the color at all, as you can see. Not a bit. It still gives me that same very, very thin coverage that I'm looking for. Now it just still has the thickness of paint. We have a lot of people asking, why would I do that over water? And that's the reason. Because now you have a very similar thickness of paint as to when the paint comes right out of the bottle. And some people just aren't as comfortable with painting with ultra thin paint. And that's fine. We're going to show you how to do it with paint that moves like paint. Now there's no chance of pooling. It stays exactly where you put it. And you'll notice I take most of the paint off on my thumb. You don't have to use your thumb. You can use any type of surface around and available. You definitely want to try to make sure you don't come to the model with a overly loaded brush. Because it will, as you use the medium especially, just give you a big clump of color that you got to figure out how to migrate around the model. That ain't always the easiest thing to do. Big droplet that you're trying to figure out, okay, where does this go? Keeps pushing into like recesses and building up way too much paint. Just be careful. This is virtually no water on the brush either. This is just the medium and the paint I'm working with right now. you start seeing with this third layer, my flesh tone really starts to take hold. Again, not adding much, if any, water to my brush. So I'll show you. Right, here's this. You just dip right into there, right? A drop of that. Make sure I don't have as big a drop. Go straight to the model. That's the miracle of our glaze wash medium. It just works. That simple. Is where you want it. Very, very translucent covering so that all of that color stays right where you want it. So you can start to see how the cheek is developing out of that. No water on my brush. I didn't go back and clean my brush or anything. I'm just continuing to move paint around. Hey, what's up, Merc? What's going on? This is our very own glaze wash medium. We are Monument Hobbies. We make this wonderful paint called Pro Acryl. And this is our Pro Acryl glaze and wash medium. It's about 2 months old. We just released it. It is a lifesaver. If you are starting out glazing, you hear about the wonders of glazing and filtering, and you want to figure out how to do it on your own, and you're struggling with water, or you haven't even started and figured out how do I do this very thin painting style, right? This makes it to where, as you can see, right, the paint is more like paint. It's not wet like water. That sounds silly to say. It doesn't flow like water. It's not low viscosity like water is the right way to say it. It flows more like paint, so you're used to it. So every brush mark, or every time you place the brush on the model, the wetness on the model moves like you expect it to with any other color paint. It's just that this color is really translucent. It's letting all of those layers underneath show through the way you want to give you that ability to have blended color on the model without worrying too much about blending. Right? And so what I'm showing is, with skin in particular, how to create the underneath colors of skin. And I don't think this is actually a thing we see on this model. I think that goes down in the neck hole. Now that I look at it, it's a pretty deep trench. I'm painting it anyway, but it's probably not going to be seen. The throat. I think his chin goes down beneath the gorget. Every few times, like every 3 or 4 times I go over and get more of the medium out, I will go rinse my brush just to make sure that I'm not, overclogging it. The medium is thick enough that if you're not careful, it will gum up your brush over time. You'll find paint not flowing out of the brush like you want it. So just make sure you go back and rinse your brush every. Moving all around the sphere of the head up to the top, and then I'm just going to use stippling. The medium is thick enough that I can stipple. I'm just going to stipple all that to stitch those brush strokes together as they come up to the top. They'll have that nice yellowy, warm glow underneath the flesh at the top of the head that I want. Into that kind of deeper blue red around the brow line. And then, of course, the flush on the cheeks. And now the goal is to just continue to add skin tones until you're happy with how much of that color underneath you can see, right? Again, you can still, once you're using the glaze medium, you can still put water on the brush, right? And that would help you to thin it down even more. So if you're looking for more of the color to show through, but you need just a tad bit of the flesh tone, then, you know, add some water to your brush, and that'll make the color even thinner without jacking up the flow too much. You can use this through an airbrush. I've been showing you over the last few weeks how you can continue to do this same type of painting with the medium, but use an airbrush. Works great through there. Jarring on this. You love it when the glaze clicks into place. It blows your mind every time. Well, it's just crazy, right? It's the whole secret to underpainting, like you're seeing me do, is that it takes the complexity out of paint mixing when you're doing such small areas like we do in miniature sometimes. If you're doing something huge, you have Enzo, right? You got Enzo, and you're doing the flesh on a head this big, right? Comparatively speaking, boom, Enzo's face is big, right? Also, he's a gorilla, so not quite as much color intrusion, but there's still quite a bit of coloring going on here with the burgundy that we can see in the back. There's some greens underneath. There's some coloring there, but the flesh is a lot thicker, so a lot less migration of other tones through there, except for around the scar, right? So on here, you notice when we painted him, I didn't do any of this. I just did it layer by layer on this because there's enough area that mixing your colors gives you the space on the model, or the model gives you the space to mix colors, put them on here, and have enough room to see how they interact with small brush strokes, putting them into like little crevices beneath, you know, folds in the skin and stuff. Whereas on Lorgar's head, you just don't have that. Can you? Sure, yeah. You can still mix colors, and you can still paint the cheeks with a mixed color of skin and flush tone like burgundy or what have you. You can still do that, but you are now going to have to be in this little bitty finite brushstroke arena. Whereas what you saw me do is just a big of burgundy around the eyes and ears, and then a bunch of green on the head and blue everywhere else. So I didn't have to think about that. I just know that you do a bluish, a cooler tone for the lower, below the cheek, do a cooler tone. Purple gives you the ability to be a little bit warmer. Purples and things work better for women. And then on males, blues, the purples still work very good, or even greens. Dark camo green works really, really well. And then that gives you your kind of shadow tone. And then you've got the red across the flush areas of the face, which is the ears, the temple, the eyes, the nose, that stuff. As you see, we also did it underneath the chin and the neck. And then up around the forehead, give it that kind of yellowy green, right? Mainly. Now, forehead can be very flush, depends on the facial expression. You can have a lot of blood bunched up in the mask if you're yelling. But generally, you want to do like yellow, green, red, blue, purple. Now, there's other things that you can add in there behind the temple. As you go red, you get into like behind the ear and stuff, you get blue. The back of the scalp is blues and purples, things like that. So again, that's just kind of what we're doing here, right? But with glazing it on like this, now I get to control how to make those colors look by using the color that the model actually is, using the flesh tone, and it's all just the same color. And I just keep glazing, right? So if this cheek is too red, well, I just come back with another layer of the glaze over the top of the cheek. Do this whole area of the face here, down along the chin, back up underneath. Here we go. Now the rosy cheek isn't so made up or dead. His flesh looks dead. This is starting to look more alive, but less like he has some sort of makeup on, right? And I'm just using the same color. This is easy. This is my eyes telling me what needs to happen, right? Which I think is the easiest part of paint. If I'm not having to have my eyes tell me what to do on the palette, they can tell me what to do on the model, I win, right? It just makes life so much easier. It's when I have to stare at the palette and the mix of the colors and all that stuff that it's like, okay, there's a lot of time spent there. It's fun, right? And it's a good way to learn to paint. But I can do this, and every brush stroke helps me see the finish line. I can say, okay, yeah, you know, I know that this last brush stroke that I'm putting on is darkening, you know, turning my skin tone areas a little too skin tone for doing the top of the head. So I don't use that same thing there, and I go off and I'll clean my brush and then come back and do the top of the head with a little bit thinner color maybe. wash, the combo of the wash medium and just the technique itself can help you with your not just skin tone. Everything that you paint can benefit from this. It just depends on how you take to it. Different rather than doing it after the fact. You're making those decisions for how much of that flush burgundy do you want to see now when you're not painting burgundy. Some people that doesn't click as easy as, no, I'll just paint the skin tones and then glaze the burgundy over the top of that. That's fine too. Go for it, do it. We say on this channel, there are as many ways to paint as there are painters. Do not ever feel bad if you see something, whether I'm doing it, whether some favorite painter of yours on the web is doing it, whether a friend of yours at the shop is doing it. Never feel bad about not being able to make something work that you see everybody else doing. Right? Now we're getting close. Right? We get that little bit of that area where he could have 5 o'clock shadow going on, which is why that cooler blue down along the jawline works so well. Grayish skin tone, yeah, it doesn't matter what color it is. You want to do blue skin, you'd be glazing blue right now. You just might want to change your underpinning colors a little, right? Like if you're doing alien skin with this method, you just need to be thinking about, okay, what color is the blood for my alien? The green. Then in place of the blues that I've used here, if you're doing blue skin, that won't work really well. So think in terms of, okay, what would work? For my aliens, yeah, maybe they have green skin, or reds works really well still, right? That's where you would wind up being, figuring all that out. It's funny, we always are kind of tongue-in-cheek in saying the best way to paint purple is not use purple as a shadow. You figure out some other color as a shadow. And that's the same shtick that we're doing here. When underpainting for flesh tones, you just don't want to use any fleshy colors. Now, the red is arguably a fleshy color, but it constitutes the blood under the skin. But you don't want to pick up like a dark flesh or shadow flesh and paint that first when doing it this way. Almost feels like we've got like veins already painted in the skin. You don't have to go back and figure out how am I going to paint blue veins on. We already have that blue color, so just makes it. Rottweiler, this is Lorgar. Lorgar Aurelian of the Word Bearers. And yeah, we do it a lot for skin because skin, I feel like, is one of those things that people have a trouble with their models looking more alive. Is that a fair statement? I think that some people will say, hey, I paint skin and I use these colors and I feel like I'm using the same colors that, this famous painter is using. They say they're using, some sort of flesh tone and this and that from GW Vallejo, Pro Acryl, whatever. And I use those same colors and my skin always looks like, like they're just wearing skin, not like the model's alive. How do you make your model look alive, right? Because we are painting, in this case, a people right? I mean, a transhuman Primarch, but you know everything we understand about them, they still have blood pumping through their veins. They still have the same things that you and I have. And if you put your skin underneath, you know, a light, you'll notice that oh hell, there's a lot more than just the skin tones I bought from so and so paint company, right? You know, I've got the greens and the yellows, right? I've got the plums and burgundies, you know, where the blood flow is, right? I've got some grays and blues, right? Got all these colors. I've got some ivory, right? Some brightness in there, right? And all of that. And depending on how that model is posed, you get more or less as you constrict and bunch up and flex muscles and growl. You get more of that flush, more of those capillaries and blood vessels, you know. And so you start to look at that and say, oh, you know, when I watch people paint orcs, it's not just dark green, mid green, bright green. There's like pinkish on the foot pads, pinkish under the hands, you know, and pinkish around the eyes and lips maybe. And that gives it just that simple addition, gives it the feeling that, oh, that thing could be alive, right? And so what I really try to say is it's less about, is this fair to say? It's less about what colors you use than making sure that you just dive into the process of making sure you just don't use a triad of color that equals the skin. Okay, because if we go, hey, this is orange skin, then you start with brown and burnt sienna and orange, right? And that's going to look like they're wearing an orange blue man suit, kind of a thing, right? It's like an orange pullover, right? Because that's going to give you good orange, right? Because those colors work great for painting orange, but it doesn't give it any life, right? So think in terms of, okay, what would that orange model have as far as what would make it feel alive? What color fat cells would it have? Yellow is great on damn near everything unless you're painting yellow skin, right? For blues, yellows around the top, around the like, you know, the underside of the arm, the fatty part of the arm and thighs and butt. Yellow works great, right? Reds, burgundies, burnt reds, things like that work really great for blood for most things except red-skinned things, right? So demons, you're probably like their blood's probably blue or purple, you know. And so you use blues and purples. It's tough to use greens because green makes sense. It's like green blood, yeah, but then you do greens and reds and you get browns. And so browns and reds just look like triad colors again. So blues and purples tend to work really well because the purple, even though it has a large spot of red in it, it still tends to give you the feel of there being that contrast underneath the skin, which is what we're going for. So skin is a great place to talk about this because it just works, right? I mean, as you can see, right, we just got a really good base layer of skin by overpainting tan flesh or shadow flesh. Boom, right? Look how different my paint color is versus what we have on the model because of the underpainting, right? So we just got, you know, 4, 5, 6 colors of skin that I don't even have in my collection, and I don't want to mix them. So instead, I painted 4 colors in layer style as opposed to blending and having to worry about where the color goes and blah, 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 blah. I just had to worry about the banding of yellow, red, blue. Yeah, and you can literally just do that. Blue down here, red up around the eyes and ears, yellow, or bright yellow green up around the top of the head. Done. Done. It's that easy. A little too much of the yellow green right here. A little bit more of that skin. And like I said, the power of the glazing medium is that I can do this. I can just put that color right there on that muscle. Be fine with it. Right? Watch. I can just take a spot of this on the brush. Little fatty fold on the back of his head. I can just glaze right there. Bam. Musculature in the back of his neck, so I can kind of highlight those, knowing that it's going to blend as it cures because of the way a glaze works. If I were just using a regular full body paint right here, then all it's really going to do is give me a line, because when you're painting very thin, that paint will spread out, blur a little bit, and give you a much better blended area, even though with this I'm painting a line. got the texture on the top of the head from where I've been stippling. So I've got that kind of dotty, fleshy pattern of color all over the face. Boom. Works really well. Fluorescent tennis ball hair, yes. Yeah, you could do this for armor, you name it, anything. We do it a lot on. Let's see if we got a model. The word bearer troops, not so much. A little bit in the thigh. You can see how I use the dark purple as the base coat color. So my shadows still have that nice dark purplish tone to them. Yeah, you can catch it really good there. Side of the hand and the arm, the butt, the inside of the thighs, back side of the leg has a little. But still, underpainting for armor gives it a nice tonal shift that you wouldn't get normally if you just did, like dark brown to red or dark red to red and such, right? And these are just painted quick. And so it still just gives you a really good way to have some nuanced color in the shadows. Right? So every model gets a little bit more contrast. The contrast isn't just a triad of color. It's a lot of fun to play with. It works really well. And I do that on everything. Purple, you'll find around here that dark purple is literally the holy grail for underpainting shadows. Like if you want to paint shadows on your model, I don't care what the model is, unless the model is purple, start with dark purple. Like you could almost paint every model dark purple. Like we'll probably come out with a dark purple primer because I paint so much stuff dark purple. And we need to, right? Because I would literally prime every model with dark purple instead of black, right? Because I start there and then work up from there and let that dark purple be your base color. Lulu, what's going on? Thank you for the follow. There you go. That was a long-winded journey through glazing skin tones. And all we've done is use one color of skin tone so far. Now we'll have to use more, right? And some people might ask the question, well, why didn't we start with, if you wanted paler skin, why didn't you just glaze the paler skin tone on first? And you very well could have. Realize that when you glaze, you typically want to start with a darker color than you're looking to have on the model. Okay? Like right now, this color that's on the model that we're seeing is lighter than the color that I'm actually glazing on here. Okay? And that's just a reality of the method of using thin paint. I haven't done a whole lot under the chin, so we've still got that bluishness under the chin, which works really well. I think I've done a swipe or two under here with skin tone. I don't want to brighten it up too much. You just want to make sure that you don't leave it blue by itself. Give it at least one quick coat over the top. Awesome, Lulu. Thank you. Good to have you. All right. If I was a smart man, I would have painted the eyes first, but I got carried away. I wanted to do this. So I'll do the eyes later. Fine. That's fine. I feel like he is kind of like alopecia. I don't feel like he has eyebrows, really, does he? Maybe? I don't feel like it. His brow line is very prominent, but not done in a way that really shows me that he has much of an actual brow, like hair on the brow. I don't know. All right, next color. So now we want to find the next brightest color. So for this case, I can use this glaze that I've already created and add some tan flesh with it. I'm done with the shadow flesh. There's nothing else on this model that is that color, so we're going to go ahead and drop in a couple, 2 or 3 drops of tan flesh so that we get a good mixed color. And we will put a of medium in there. If I added 3 drops of paint, I probably want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and double that up. We already had a lot of glazed medium in here, so we don't need to go 10 times as much again. Then just get my wet number 6 brush and stir that up. Now, if you're very comfortable with your glazing skills, then you could just go straight to tan flesh. It's a much brighter flesh tone, so you just got to be careful as you're mixing that up that you don't get too carried away. Right? But we still have a very thin skin tone to work with. It's just now we're going a step brighter. Yeah, it looks like almost like he has no facial hair, like he's shaving himself clean because he has all the runes that he writes on himself. He writes his book of Lorgar inscribed all over his skin. So I think I'm going to go without hair on his face. I think that's fine. And then, the tough thing is that I don't feel like he has very pale skin, but I'm going to go a little paler than I might normally. I guess we could go darker. I just don't want to have him exactly like Ryan. Right? And I've gone fairly pale with the, so maybe not. I don't know. We'll keep going. We'll keep going. Yeah. Same thing here. Same process. We just want to get the paint, take most of it off our brush, start finding those areas that would be brighter. And allowing the paint is that much thicker. Go. Getting up to the mask of the face and the chin a little bit, depending on where your light's coming from. I think he's kind of looking straight at the light. Good balanced brightness across the. Every time you add a brighter color, you'll notice your darker colors start to show more. So the flush area underneath the cheeks, the darkness for the 5 o'clock shadow on the chin starts to show more as we add the brighter colors. You got to be careful here. You notice how I'm just kind of going through with the point of the brush. I'm not adding a whole lot of color as I do this. Make him an albino. I would have had to have started a little bit. I would have started probably more of a magenta color underneath the skin than burgundy. He's probably pretty good. I probably would have gone with a pinkish tone though. Albino skin is tough to because it is missing some of the colors that we do when painting. It still has them. They're just not as prominent as the pinks. And so you have to remember as you're painting at miniature scale, you really are sticking with what's prominent in most cases, opposed to pure reality. We just don't have enough room for reality in a lot. You have room for real as possible. But always sacrificing makes the story, right? Like in terms of albinism or albinoism, makes the story right is the pale flesh tone and all the pink. Kind of pulling the brightness at the top of the dome and stippling around. But I do get some. Not looking too shabby. I'm looking on the palette for my color. I'm like, it's not in the palette. It's on in a cup. Paint's in the cup. Is in the cup. Like that last sculpted. This side is away. I'm not worried about like lighting up the bottom of the chin. Getting his brown line in his brow. Make sure it's not super dark. We like that darkness, but we don't want it to get so dark that it starts being heavily shadowed, so it looks like it's a, I think, kind of crease on his brow line. We didn't want it to be dark. I like the idea that it's a ring across the forehead from his concern line, but I don't want to have it be something that's so dark. Like this. Again, just to show how precise the glaze can be, we can brightness. Show you how you can be very, very specific with the placement, even built it into a. You're used to trying to glaze with water and such, you know how hard this part really is. Typically fighting to get small details and stuff like that. Like I just want that little bit of shine that goes up from the back left of the dome. A little bit more of this color behind the ears just so it's not quite as dark as it was. It won't brighten them up too much because we had a much darker color under there. There we go. The hardest thing to get used to is the fact that you will eventually get to the full brightness of the color you're painting with, and you won't be able to get a whole lot out of it past a certain point. And we're pretty much there. Like, I'm not going to be able to get this model much brighter than what it is with the color on my brush. I have to brighten the color up. You get lost when glazing sometimes in the idea that, oh, just keeps every time I put a layer on there, it gets brighter and brighter and brighter, and then eventually it stops. The brakes are hit, and it's like, oh wait, why isn't it getting brighter anymore? Well, it's because you've reached color, or as close to the color you're painting with as you can. Kind of stippling as I go around the top of the dome to go. Oh, are you using your glaze and wash medium? Yes. Yes, 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 we are. Yep, we've done all of this. The steps that we've been going through here. Let me see if I can give you some super zoom here and have it stay in focus on this tiny freaking dome that we're painting here. Bifocal. Okay. So we started by painting Lorgar's face with dark gray blue. Get the colors out. Dark gray blue down from the area basically right above the lips. Right, blue. I painted the whole head dark gray blue. Right, so I painted everything dark gray blue. That's easier to say that way. Paint the whole head dark gray blue, which seems weird, but it's a really good color for that 5 o'clock shadow kind of feel through here. Right, I can see where we get a little bit more super zoom helping out. A little too pure blue right in here. There we go. Okay. So that blue gives us that great, cool shadow feeling and helps us get that 5 o'clock shadow that is good for men. If you're painting women's flesh, blue is probably not the best thing. I would go with dark greens or purples, right? Because women don't have the same skin quality here. Obviously not the same pronounced hair follicle. Okay. Same with the mustache. Of course, we're doing Lorgar, and I feel like he's got alopecia or something. So we're not really jacked around with making sure that he looks like he hasn't shaved in a year or two. And then around the band from the ears, around the front, including the eyes, burgundy. That's what's giving us that flush tone under the cheeks. Right? So you get this really weird blue burgundy, except it remains blue around the back of the skull. Right? And then bright yellow green from above the eyes. Right? So just above the brow line, you leave a little bit of the blue above the brow line, and then bright yellow green all the way around the back at the top, like a skull cap that he's wearing. Right? And then you just use the glaze medium to put that flesh tone over the top. And that's what we've been showing. And you get a very realistic, more alive feel to skin by doing so. Right? And I've been doing things like stippling, so you see all those textures that we've got going on there. I typically don't like to simply layer skin with smooth brush strokes, because skin's not like that. Right? Skin has a cellular structure to it. Even in miniature, doing that might give a little bit too much. Like, it may look like they got liver spots if you go too overboard with your stippling and texturing. But for the most part, you can get away with it. Right? And it gives us enough of a good feel for... He's not quite super unhealthy, but I mean, he is marred by chaos, so we'll go with that. Chloe, you made his Twitch account just to ask these questions. Awesome. And glad you got to see the gang at Gen Con. Sorry we couldn't be there myself. Yeah. Yeah, even if you just do one of those colors, or even if you just do the blue and the red, it helps so much for then glazing your skin tones over the top. It goes by a lot quicker than what you're seeing me do here, because you're not having to talk to people on a stream and explain it every step of the way. So when you get it and it starts clicking, boom, you're done. The biggest thing is mixing all of your glaze correctly. And the right way to think about that is probably you don't need more than about 2, depending on how much paint you're using, you probably only need about 2 drops, 1 or 2 drops of the color you want to glaze, and then probably about 8 to 10 drops of the medium mixed with that, right? So if you go 1 drop of paint, use 8 drops of medium. You go 2 drops of paint, use 10 to 12 drops of medium, right? So like somewhere around that 6 times the amount, 5 to 6 times the amount, and test that for thinness and see how you like it. When glazing, one of the things we haven't mentioned is it's always better to err on the side of too thin than too thick. Too thin you can fix. You put it on the model, you don't see a lot of color, bingo, add a little more paint. Then test that, put that on the model, you'll be good, right? If you don't thin it enough, don't put enough medium in there to get the opacity down so you can see through the paint, right? Because the thing with medium is it doesn't feel like you've thinned it, right? Our medium is still very thick. You know, look at this, right? That's still paint, right? It's flowing like paint, as opposed to flowing like water. And so if you're not used to that, then it feels like paint. You need to test it for its visible thinness, right? Its opacity being stripped away from it before putting it on, because if you put it on too thick and you then blow out all of the colors that were underneath, now you're left with, oh gosh, why did I paint the blue and the red and everything underneath? It's not the end of the world. You can still glaze those over the top, or you might just stop and repaint your base colors again. Right? But if you go too thin, you can always layer more paint on top of it and get exactly where you want to be. Make sense? Good God, with those eyes. Did they even sculpt eyes, or is it just like a hole in his head? Doesn't feel like, all these guys feel like they're squinting. Like I can't even see really where the eye is. Oh yeah, there. Got like really beady close together. Scleras. We'll do something about that. In Uval. Somebody asked me how we're going to do the runes on here, and I'm looking at it as if, do we want to do runes? I don't think it's possible. I don't think there's a way that I could do the runes on his head that would sell it and not just make it look like garbage on the model, right? I'm not sure it makes sense to try to do that. Because we're talking about, I mean, like not even pinpricks with a small sense. A bunch of dots, right? I don't think makes a whole lot of sense, which is a shame when you have a character that has such great lore and has, like, you know, his own writings tattooed or engraved on his skin, such a part of what makes Lorgar. I think it works. The squinch makes for better intensity in portraiture. I mean, I'm sure it does, but we're painting things here, and we're not painting portraits on big canvases. So to heck with all that nonsense. Blank Walker, what's going on, man? You definitely have a tendency to go thick, so you definitely wouldn't have started with the 6-1. Yeah. Yeah. The nice thing is that the medium makes it still feel like paint. You know, we get to a point, and Houdini, what's happening, man? You know, we get to a point where we don't want to add so much material to our paint because we feel like that makes it like water. Because so often we're using things that are liquidy like water, low viscosity additives, water being the main one. I use water for 99.9% of my additive stuff here when I'm thinning paint, period. That's all I use. Now that we've come out with a glazed wash medium, now I start using that, and it's like having to relearn the wheel for me in some cases, like today, because it moves like paint. It's thick like paint. So when you put it on, I'm not thinking. My brain is usually ready to keep my brushstroke going and the speed of my brushstroke going to catch that loose, watery paint and move it how it needs to go. Stay away from certain areas because, you know, you'll lose control. It'll go down that trough and slide all the way down the model, and then you got to clean that up. Whereas with the medium, you're just back to painting, man. It's just layering. It's just you don't see as much paint with every brushstroke, right? So it really, if you can get over that, like I'm an old dog with very few new tricks. So if I'm used to painting a certain way, to paint in a different way that achieves the same result, sometimes it's very hard because I already have an expectation of what's supposed to happen. If you start early on with your glazing and use the glaze medium, you're going to be blown away because it's just going to allow you to paint with thin paint beautifully, right? Without any question. Let's go with just some tan fleck. You had to squint to keep the sand out. Since they're kind of all that way, I don't know if I'm buying it. but I hear what you're saying. I give you an E for effort on the defense of the GW sculptor. There's not a good solution for eyes. You know, you can't make them big and beady because then it's like and the models look silly. So I totally get it. But by the same token, now I'm gonna thin with water. I don't need a whole lot of this bright tan flesh, um, right? So I'm just gonna thin with water. But this one. I'm at super zoom, so give me. Typically, when I go with a color like this, I don't want to interrupt what I've got going on to start in on areas that would be easy to err, but I be happy with the way. Ears on faces, always. Places that works well. And again, I just take this number 1 brush that I got and I load it with a bunch of water. Paint. Paint. You could simply just mix another batch of putting so little of this on. We're literally working with barely any brush tip, hardly anything. Howdy. He's squinting as he's trying to paint the tiny minis in his world. Now that I like. I feel like now you've nailed it, right? That's got to be the damn. Stage where you can bring out some detail, but you got to be careful. Go overboard. we are still trying to highlight. We don't want to have to go too much brighter than, unless your intention is for pale skin. Pop out. Eyes. Bright skin tone, light color. Eyes with just to get them figured out. A lot of times you just paint like that to figure out where the raises are in them. Feel like upper portion. Let's a little bit. I'm going to put a pinch of wash in the eyes. I want to stare at the tear duct on the eye. So then I'm wondering, I want to use, no, I think I want to use the brown one. Right? Brown wash. Brown, black, brown, flesh, 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 clear. What is this? Black, earth. If he's Primaris, wouldn't his scale be bigger? I think he's got a little bitty resin printer. He's got a printer in his armor. Okay, wait a minute. I'm not following along, but you guys are out of control now. You guys are out of control now. All right, we're going to get a number 1 brush. Actually, is that going to be enough? Yeah, that'll probably be enough. A number 1 brush. Get some wash on our number 1 brush. Number 1. You number 1. Okay. This is our brown pre-mixed wash. It's not on the market yet, so don't yell at me. Well, you can yell at me all you want. I'm not going to make it on the market anymore. We're just going to do right at the inner inch of the eye here. Get some on the brush that actually wants to do out onto the model. I don't think it's... Oh, that was a trick. Didn't hit it from the right. eye is right eye is sculpted very different. Socket is not deep. I'm not. Maybe balance is a bit better, but that works. That works. Quick. Give me my X10. Super Psycho freaking T90 brush. Trying to get a little bit of the ridge of the eyelid underneath too. I think that's what's sculpted differently on the right is the bottom eyelid. Upper eyelid on that side, not on this side away from the light. That. Rid of the darkness on the what do that with? Use this. Wash this the I did it. Got rid of the dark. Raccoon part of the map. Got me eyes. Okay. Works pretty good. I want him to be a little sunken because I mean he's Lorgar, but I don't want to sink him too far in there. Which you know, the wider the darkness comes around the eye, the further it pushes the eyeball back in the head. So I went over it with this same glaze that we made for like the second stage of the skin on the head, and I just used that real quick with the X10 and got rid of some of that where the wash was forcing the eye back. But I think I got both of the eyelids okay. And they're pretty even. What say you? Okay? Pretty okay? I feel like this side over here towards the light is still a little bit darker than it need to be, but afraid of what to do here. Let's grab a little bit of the shadow flesh, the darker skin tone that we've used. I'm afraid that the lighter color is gonna be too jarring if I put it up inside the pinch of his eye. And more damn time worried about eyes that are 2 millimeters wide. Trying to glaze with the smallest brush in our arsenal. Just I need to get this dude right up in there. Beginning to think that washes that. It worked well on the other. Better. That works. I'm a stickler, man. If you're gonna paint the eyes, you gotta do it anyway. Gotta do it right. His commanding officer always gives him a hard time, but secretly he enjoys having the coolest tactical map in the 41st millennium. What are we talking about now? But Lorgar doesn't have a commanding officer, does he? He's a Primarch. Can't he just be, like, in charge? I feel like he's just in charge. Orax, what's going on? What's up, fartists? Farting. Farting around. I want to get you a little bit of this laugh line over here. Pooches out for part of the. Aha, perfect. I'm an idiot. you can see, like, it's like, it's no wonder Jason never finishes models. Because I'm like, you see that little teeny dot of paint right there, and that little teeny dot of paint right there? That made all the difference in the world. Made all the difference in the world. Oh, do we have to put pupils on his eyes? Can he have glowy eyes? Do Chaos guys get the benefit of glowy eyes? I feel like they do, right? We could just do glowy eyes. Yeah, this is all for Lorgar, by the way. Sure. The micrometer and the brush with the one single hair. Think we can do it? Oh my god. Always looks so beady. All right. Do you want to know trick? Trick is black-brown, very thin. Or transparent black is also a very, very good idea. Right? I'm going to thin the black-brown down to where it's just about like a transparent paint. The blue, white, fire, glowing eyes. Yeah, it's a good cheat, but I think we'll just do it. We'll just do it. 30K. He loves chaos, but he hadn't done it the whole way. Damn it. All right, I need a little bit of the glazed wash medium. The glazed wash medium works great for dotting eyes. Again, because it keeps the paint very thin visually in its opacity, but not thin physically in its viscosity. Okay? Those are very scientific words that make me look smart, but the reality is it makes it feel like paint. So when you dip your paintbrush into it and you do the thing, you only have to touch the model like once. Paint doesn't go dripping all over the place, hopefully. The idea. Pray for it. Mix a little bit up. On the brush. Brush. I'm going to walk the. Go. We hate ourselves? Or do we love ourselves? Like a pool cue. Oh, we got a crazy eye. Man down. Man down. We got a crazy eye. We should give him. We should give him an what you call it, an eyeglass. Be Colonel Clink. Feels a lot like Colonel Clink to me. Anybody else getting Colonel Clink vibe? Better, but that pupil's where your eyes start tearing up. I think that's okay. I can work with that. That's okay. I'm gonna bring a little bit over to our right. Pupil 3 times. There we go. That did it. That did balance out the amount of sclera to the right side of that pupil. That's got